Hi everyone, my name is Christy Carrolls and I'm an SE with McAfee. Today what we're going to show is how if we had McAfee application and change control running on our system, we would not be able to be exploited on a CentOS 5 machine. We're going to be utilizing backtrack to drop some malicious payloads on and then exploit and put a backdoor version of SSH and gain root into our system. Then we're going to show these same things again, and we're going to have McAfee application change control installed, and we're going to show what happens. So let's get started. Alright, we have two machines running, so we're going to get started. We have our backtrack machine, and then we also have our CentOS vulnerable machine. From our backtrack machine, we're going to do some reconnaissance. We're going to open up a terminal, and we're going to do an nmap. We're going to do a loud nmap. We're going to see what kind of information we can get about this machine. Alright, our results are back from our nmap, and we can see a couple things. First and foremost, it's a Linux box. That's what we're running. That's our kernel, that's our OS. Also, we can see that this is open and it's running HTTPD. So let's go ahead and try and exploit our web application. So we're going to start by opening up Firefox, and we're going to open up our web application. And it's our vulnerable web app, and we're going to log into this. Alright, this is our damn vulnerable web app that we've got running, that we found. We did some reconnaissance to find this information. The security we're going to set to low so that we can do some command executions on this system. And so this is where it gets kind of cool. We're going to do some ping commands. So we can ping any address and submit that. First thing we're going to notice is that it comes back like a command line, so we're actually seeing the ping from the other host. So that's our first vulnerability, is that the pinger actually is vulnerable as well. So we're going to start to exploit that. So we're going to enter the address of our vulnerable machine. And we'll submit that, and we'll see it comes back like a command line. So that's our first indication that this is vulnerable. Our pinger actually has a vulnerability, so this is our vulnerability number 1. So we're going to actually start exploiting this. Next thing we're going to do, we're just going to execute a ping with a command at the end. And we're going to show our directory. Look, we're able to see that we are in a certain directory. And that we're showing some files and that they're all owned by root. So this lets us know that we actually can start exploiting utilizing this ping response using this command line. I'm going to see who I'm actually logged in as too, so I can exploit it this way by typing in and I am as Apache. So let's see if we can actually start doing something along those lines. The attacker now wants to see how far they can get, so now we know we're Apache and we can actually start doing something. So we're going to see if there's any areas in the world that are writable, and usually the temp directory is, so we're actually going to see what that location looks like. And look at that. So it looks like it is world writable. We can see this first line right here. That dot is that location, and it is world writable. Now we're going to see if we can actually write something to this directory. So we're going to ping it and exploit this ping vulnerability. We're going to use wget, which is easily usable to get things from the internet. We're going to tell it where to write to. Alright, so let's see what we just did. So we're going to test this. And look, there's our file that we just put in that directory. So we actually just wrote something in there, and we have write access. And we're going to use this as our scratchpad. So again, our file is there, it's owned by Apache, we have a place to work, and now we have our command execution. We need a payload to give us a shell to work in, and since Apache probably won't be able to do anything, we're going to try and get root. So we're going to go all the way. We're going to open up another command window in the terminal on backtrack. We're going to make it wide so we can kind of see some information that's in there. And we are in root. So we're going to cd to pentest. This is a directory that has a bunch of our pentest stuff in it. Go back to opt. Alright, we're looking in our MSF3 directory, which has a bunch of our malicious payloads in it. And we're going to see that we have one that's called MSF payload. And we're going to run that because that shows us what our payloads are. So now we have our results. We know we have a Linux box from doing our nmap earlier, so we're going to scroll up to Linux. And we see we have all these different things that we're able to use. We're actually going to use the Linux x86 shell, and there's one in there called reverse TCP. Here we go. Shell reverse TCP. So that's the one we're going to use. So let's go ahead and select that, copy it, and then we're going to show a summary of this attack. And here's the summary that's going to pop up, shows what this attack's going to do. Here's our results. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. It's a Linux attack, x86. Here's our listening host. We don't have one set yet, but our listening port is 443. I'm going to leave it at that. If you're worried about a firewall on the system, you can say that it changed the port to 443. Obviously, it's pretty easy to get through a firewall if you're going on 443. Alright, we're going to type this command to tell it what our listening host is. The listening host is .86, which is our backtrack machine. So we're going to run that again. And notice we didn't have a listener before, but after this completes, we'll show that it's listening to that. Alright, so now our listening host is 1.86. Now we need to wrap our payload into being executable. So we are going to type this command. We're going to create an executable, and we're going to call it the reverse.bin file. So we'll run that, and our results are back, and we can see that it's created our payload through Metasploit, shell underscore reverse TCP, and our listener host is 1.86, which is our backtrack machine, which is exactly what we want. Now we need to be able to get that over to our other machine. Before we do that, though, let's make sure that this is an executable. And it is executable and linkable file, so that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. Since we're exploiting a web app, we're actually going to put this file into our var www directory so we can actually get it through our vulnerable web application. So we're going to copy to there it is. So there's our file, and we're ready to go. So now we need to get our payload over to our vulnerable CentOS machine. So we're going to open Firefox back up, and we're going to use that ping exploit that we found earlier. And we're going to wget it over. Submit. So we're going to go see if we got that over there, and the way we're going to do this is we're going to use that ping to see what's in the temp directory. And there it is. There's our malicious payload. We can also see that it's owned by Apache and that it's only readable. So we're going to actually change the permissions on that so we can execute that as Apache, because remember, we're logged in as Apache. So Let's see if this executed properly. And there we go, we have execute capabilities. Now we're going to run our payload so that we can exploit our system. So let's open up another terminal, and we're going to watch our payload execute and see our listeners. So we're going to do netcat. And remember, our listening port was 4444, so we're going to get that started. And then we're going to watch this happen. So we're going to go back over to Firefox, and we're going to use this to execute. And as you can see, we're now connected in, and we have a backdoor into our vulnerable machine. So now I can connect, and I can actually type commands. So look, I'm Apache, and that's how I'm logged in. I can do an ls and show what directory I'm in. I'm also in my vulnerable web app. That's how I've exploited it in my var www directory. So we're seeing that we actually have access into the system at the moment. And since we're an attacker and we don't just stop at Apache access, we want to get root access. So again, if we type ID, we say that we're Apache. And let's look at some other things. It's CentOS release 5, and through our infinite wisdom, we happen to know that this kernel version is vulnerable. So we're going to go try and exploit it, because that's where our scratch pad is going to be. So we do pwd, there we go, we're at temp. So we're going to go back to our backtrack, and we'll see that there's a couple different files in there that we have created. One is our reverse.bin, that's one we just created from before. We also have our 9479.bin, which is our payload, which will give us root access. And then here's our vulnerable SSHD that we created that actually has a backdoor root password in it, which also logs a little keylogger everybody who logs in via SSHD and their passwords in clear text. So this is actually pretty cool. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to go for root, and we're going to exploit it that way. So we're going to exploit our ping again, and we're going to bring that 9479 file over to our machine. So we're going to use that wget exploit again. Okay, so we're going to go see our results and to see if our file is actually in there, and yep, there it is. So we have executed putting the file over there. So we can actually go back to where we're listening. So we're going to go back to our command shell that we have SSH, or the reverse shell actually, back to our vulnerable CentOS machine. We'll do an lsla, and we'll notice now that we have write capability for that 9479. So we're going to run that, actually execute it. And that's okay, because we can notice that our shell changed, and we now have this right here. If we do an ID, we are now in as root. So we're not going to just stop there, because we want to exploit SSH as well. So now that we're root, we're going to go even farther. So now that we're in as root, we can actually do a lot of different things. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn off SSH, and alright, we've stopped SSHD. Now we're going to look at where that is and see where it's actually located, so we know where to put our malicious package. If we scroll up in this file, that we can see that it's located in user local sbin. Okay, so that tells us exactly where we need to go put it. So let's go ahead and remove it from there. So alright, there's nothing in there now, so we just removed that file. And let's go ahead and get it from our malicious machine. All right, we just brought it over. So it's gonna be sitting in temp directory, so there it is. Notice it only has read capability, so we need to chmod that. Change permissions so we can execute. And we're gonna copy it over. You can see that it's there now, and it is owned by root, so this is excellent, and we're gonna start SSHD again. And that's okay, because we know that this is our malicious version, but SSH is now started. Alright, so we've replaced our good SSHD with our backdoored one. The backdoor allows us to have root privileges with what's called a magic password. That's how it's compiled. The magic password actually just is magic password to get in. So it's really easy to file. And then what we can do is we'll see that this package doesn't log the user, the root user, in our var log messages. So we're going to check that out. So this is how we're going to do this. We're going to go back over to our backtrack machine. And first thing we're going to do is log in as root onto that machine. 5. It wants to know my password. It's just magic password. And I'm in. So I've logged in. We can see what the time is. It's 14:15. And we're going to exit out of here. I'm also going to log in as me. And we can see that I'm in at 12:56. So the scary thing about this is that none of this was logged in var log secure, so we're going to tail that. And we'll see that there's a root login, but it doesn't show that time. So it was 14:15, and we're at a completely different time, so it doesn't actually show that. One of the other files that it created is in our temp directory. So if we cat var, tmp ilog, which we created, you'll notice that when I logged in, it logged my username and password. So we're going to show this again. So I'm going to exit out, and I'm going to go in as root actually. So I'm going to use the real root password. And I'm in, so I'm going to exit out of here and I'll log in as me again. And we're going to go back and look at that var log, that temp log again. And it's logged all of my logins. The other part to this is it isn't logging that in my messages file. So this is a pretty scary attack. So we're going to show this now of how this could all be blocked when we use Solid Core. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to log into our CentOS machine as root. I reverted to snapshot, so it doesn't have any of those malicious files on it. We're also going to see that the Solid Core is installed, but it is disabled, so I'm going to enable it. And it will be enabled on next reboot, so let's go ahead and reboot. Okay, so we fast forwarded through time and we have rebooted. We're going to log back in and check the status, and we'll see it's enabled. Now let's go back to our backtrack machine. And one of the interesting things is we know that we'd be able to do that reconnaissance against that system, because although it is solidified, it still allows us to do the reconnaissance, but it won't allow us to actually run code. So we're going to open up Firefox. We're going to try and exploit that existing web browser issue. Open up our web app. going to set our security again. So it still allows us to ping, which is exactly what we expect. So remember we did all that reconnaissance earlier to get that payload created. We're just going to use that now and try and push that over back to our vulnerable machine. So I copied the link. We're going to submit it. And then we are going to do an LSLA on that tab. So we'll list the directory and we'll see what's running in the background. And we will see that we do have a reverse bin running right there. So let's go ahead and open up a terminal, and we're going to netcat to see if this opens our payload. And it's going to listen. That was our port from before. And we're going to try and run it and submit. You'll notice nothing happens over here because nothing can actually be executed. We're going to show you this actually. We're going to go back to our CentOS machine. And we're logged in. There it is. It's actually sitting in our temp directory. But when we try and run this, permission denied. Again, here we are, we're blocked because we have solid core enabled. And this will be actually logged in the solid core logs. If we go look in the directory where the solid core log is, we're going to notice that it has been blocked. So it's in bar log, McAfee solid core log, and we see the last area where it shows prevented unauthorized execution of this file by process blah. So first thing, it's been blocked, and we can't go any farther because solid core doesn't allow us to execute in non-solidified code.